It was just another Friday night in Darwin, young people heading out for a bit of fun. But for one family and a lot of other people, their lives were about to change forever, this particular Friday night. It all goes tragically wrong at the intersection of McMillan's Road and the Stuart Highway in Berrima on the 7th of April 2006.
This Holden Commodore heading outbound at around 8:30 last night, running a red light, colliding with this Mitsubishi Lancer, two males in each car. 22-year-old Donald MacLean, a passenger in the Lancer, died soon after. The Commodore driver fleeing the scene, police believe he had been drinking, Major Crime Squad detectives investigating.
If Donald MacLean was alive today, he'd have turned 30 in late April. Instead, the official records will show him as having died at just 22 years of age. Donald loved his football, his mates, his girlfriend Amanda, and especially his family. His parents Heather and Chris, sister Julia, and younger brother Curtis.
Wrestling with Don was we did it quite often. I just walk in the room, it was mainly me instigating everything. I'd come in from behind and headlocks and he used to just take it, and then one day he stopped taking it and started giving it. I'd be sitting on the couch and we'd end up into a wrestle.
The MacLeans had moved from New Zealand to make Australia their home. They were as typical a family as you could meet. They loved life in the top end, and the two brothers were the best of mates. Curtis's plan was to move to Perth to try and make it as a rugby player. And once settled in there, Don would follow to become Curtis's manager.
We were all at the airport and saying goodbye to everyone. Basically, it was his turn to say goodbye, and I was crying like a little baby, you know. And he told me, he looked at me and I was like, I love you, bro, because I didn't know whether I was going to see him for the next year or so. I said, I love you, bro, and he just turned to me and said, harden up, mate, I'll see you soon.
So what kind of a bloke was Donald MacLean? He didn't always toe the line, but he was strong and reliable. And those closest to Don knew that he could also be a bit of a stirrer.
In the back of his car, he had a little DVD screen, and he'd always play the All Black games where they beat the Wallabies, and I'd have to watch it on the way into town.
Everybody said he had an old soul. He was just a really, really nice young man who loved his sports.
But this blossoming of a young man's life was about to end suddenly and tragically, as Don and his best mate Stuey kicked off what was meant to be just a good night out.
We went to Kentucky and got a burger and then went to get some fuel, you know. Got to the intersection of McMillan's Road and we're turning right. There was a red light, you know, we stopped and there was a car in front of me and there was a car to my left. And there's another car pulled up as well, so my vision was pretty blocked. The light went green, we took off. And the car beside me sort of veered around, and as he's veered around, I didn't even get a chance to see the car, and yeah, the car came through and cleaned us up.
We initially looked at trying to get him out of the car, but his legs had been caught up in had been crushed in the footwell, so we couldn't move him, we couldn't get the seatbelt off him. He was part of the wreck.
I was wakened just after 11 o'clock with the dogs barking.
Heather walked in and it turned out to be it was a policeman to inform me what had happened.
He stood there and roared like a bull. He just broke down and it was just heartbreaking.
As parents, Chris and Heather had to somehow break the agonising news to their daughter Julia, who was still at work.
I remember walking down the hallway into the office and I opened the door and Mum and Dad were standing there and they had two of their best friends behind them. And my first thought was Curtis because he had left only 3 weeks before to move to Perth. So I said Curtis and they said no, and I took a couple of steps back and I looked at Dad and I said Donald. And he's like, yeah. And I ran into the storeroom and my legs collapsed and Dad caught me.
The phone call was the worst thing that I could ever imagine. Nothing really would come close, I don't think. My mum rang me, it was 11 at night, And I'd only just gone to bed. And I was lying there and she rang me and I could tell she was upset and she said, there's been an accident. And then just something in my head was like, Don, Don. I was like, no, please don't let it be Don. And then she said, your brother Donald's been killed. And I just couldn't say anything. She was trying to talk to me, see if I was right, and I just couldn't say anything. I ended up hanging up the phone.
He's my tough rugby player that just broke his heart.
But the pain for the family only intensified when they saw Don's body for the first time.
Seeing my lifeless brother tried to be glued back together, tried to be covered with certain makeup, and to see him grey and discoloured, to see what had actually happened, to see the scars of what had happened from a car accident. It was the most horrible thing of my life, and I've had so many nightmares.
The MacLean family had only lived in Australia for 4 years, yet more than 500 people turned up for Don's funeral.
I just remember Curtis and Donald's dad, Chris, when the hearse was going out, yelling out, see you mate, you know. That still sticks in my head, you know.
Watching his coffin drive away, and I knew, because he's going to get cremated, that I'd never see him again.
I can't give him a high five for scoring a try. You know, I can't give him, a hug to sort of say, you bloody played a good game today.
After a 2-day police hunt, the offending driver finally handed himself in.
The offending driver's reason for not remaining at the accident, it wasn't an adequate response. His response was that he'd just blanked out, so unfortunately I can't give you anything more than that.
I believe he had something to hide, but that's only an assumption.
Ultimately, a 4-year sentence was handed down, but when this was drastically reduced, it left everyone in disbelief.
15 months he's out living a normal life. He can have kids, he can do whatever he wants, whereas Don's just ashes in a box now.
Understandably outraged, Chris and Heather MacLean were sparked into action by the sentence the offending driver received. They lobbied long and hard to have the laws changed, especially for drivers who leave the scene of an accident. Eventually, their persistence paid off.
There is now a law with a penalty up to 10 years jail for anyone that hit and runs.
No questions asked, whether they've been drinking or not.
This is the intersection where Donald was killed. This is the warning sign that the driver who killed Donald would have seen. From this sign to the intersection, he would have had 12.7 seconds to stop, but he chose not to, and he killed Donald, and from that time on, life was so different. 12.7 seconds.
There are constant reminders of what happened to Donald MacLean. Stuey Hunt is haunted by them when he drives to work every day, through that same intersection. Although it was not his fault, Stuey still feels somehow responsible for Don's death.
You wish you could have seen the car coming, you know. You wish you could have done something to, just in that split second, you know, maybe to change the way things happen. But
his injuries wasn't so much a big thing compared to how he personally suffered, I believe. He blamed himself for the crash, which was just terrible that he had to go through that.
But as much as the family try to move on with their lives, they just can't get over the day they lost Don.
I've still got his mobile number in my phone. Of course it doesn't work anymore, but every now and again I'll send him a message, even though I know that he doesn't get it, which is maybe a bit bizarre, but I feel like I need to talk to him sometimes.
Donald was so deeply committed to rugby in the top end that his parents established the Donnie Mac Award, an annual trophy for the most valuable player from the Darwin Dragons Rugby Union Club.
Even as a little boy, he was happy out on a rugby field, kicking the ball, and he taught a lot of other young kids around how to do that as well. So,
my dad used to be a bit slack every now and then. After a footy game, he used to say he was a bit sore, but Donnie played and he wasn't sore. He'd always come out for a kick. The thing I miss most about Don is he's not here anymore. He's gone.
It's not just one person that's taken, it's one person out of so many other people's lives.
For my future kids I hope to have, I've lost a perfect uncle, I've lost my best man at a wedding, I've lost everything. Don was it.
I guess with all the sadness and pain surrounding Don's death and the emotional impact that will never go away, it helps to remember how much fun he brought to everybody. And younger brother Curtis recalls a legendary family trip to Sydney for a Bledisloe Cup match.
We got to the hotel and there was only 2 beds, and they had Mum and Dad had their room obviously, and then Don and I were stuck on this queen-size bed. And in the morning I woke up to this, and I looked over like, oh no, there was a window cleaner on the window. You could see he looked in and was thinking, what's going on here? 2 blokes lying in bed. And Don's like, oh no, this guy's gonna think, blah, blah, blah. I was like, don't worry about it, bro. Put my arm over him and pulled him closer towards me. And Don didn't take too nicely to it. It was pretty good though.
What happened to Donald Winton MacLean, along with the deaths of so many innocent people, was caused by a driver who should not have been on the road. As simple as that. But let's leave the final words of this sad, sad story to Heather MacLean, who has a mother's heartfelt plea for all drivers.
They can stop this happening simply by getting a sober bob, getting a taxi, just not thinking that they're invincible, that it's never going to happen to them, because it does. It happens to me. I'm no one special. It's, it happened to me, it happened to Don, it's happened to my family, and it's destroying.